The champagne flute slipped from my hand in slow motion, crystal shattering against the limestone floor of the country club terrace. Around me, 200 guests froze mid-conversation, their shocked faces turning toward the spectacle I'd just created. My future mother-in-law's lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Her pearls seemed to tighten around her throat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm so sorry, I whispered, but the words were swallowed by the collective gasp that followed. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly understand, was that the glass had slipped not from clumsiness, but from the text message that had just lit up my phone screen. 6 words that would unravel everything I thought I knew about the man I was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Emma Castellano, and until that Saturday evening in late October, I believed I was living a carefully curated dream. Marketing director at a boutique firm in Charleston, engaged to Marcus Wellington III, descended from old Southern money and newer tech fortune. We'd met 18 months ago at an art gallery opening, where he'd stood before a Jackson Pollock reproduction, making witty observations about chaos theory and color psychology. He was charming, educated, came from what everyone called good people. I should have known better. The evening had started like any other Wellington family gathering, rigid, performative, exhausting. Marcus's parents, Constance and Marcus Jr., had insisted on hosting our engagement celebration at the Magnolia Oak Country Club, where 3 generations of Wellingtons had celebrated every milestone worth commemorating. The guest list read like a social register directory: judges, senators, old money families whose fortunes predated the Civil War. I'd worn the dress Constance had selected, a demure cream sheath with cap sleeves, pearls that had belonged to Marcus's grandmother, my dark hair swept into an elegant chignon. I looked the part of the perfect Wellington bride, polished, restrained, appropriate. Everything Marcus had spent the past year molding me into. "Darling, you really must be more careful," Constance said, her voice carrying across the terrace with practiced projection. A server appeared instantly to clean up the mess, apologizing profusely as if the accident had been his fault. These things happen when one isn't accustomed to formal settings. The barb landed exactly as intended. My mother had been a nurse, my father a high school history teacher. We'd been comfortable, not wealthy. I'd earned my college degree through scholarships and part-time jobs, not trust funds. To Constance Wellington, this made me perpetually suspect, always one wrong move away from revealing my unsuitable origins. Marcus materialized at my elbow, his hand gripping my arm just a shade too tightly. To anyone watching, it might have looked supportive. I knew better. "Why don't you go freshen up?" he said, smiling for the benefit of our audience while his fingers pressed warningly into my skin. "I'll handle things here." In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and finally looked at my phone properly. The message was from an unknown number, but the attachment was clear enough: a PDF file labeled Charleston County Court Records, Marcus A. Wellington III. My hands shook as I opened it. 3 arrests. All expunged from public records sealed by expensive lawyers and family connections. The first was from his sophomore year at UVA, assault charges after he'd put another student in the hospital during a fraternity party. The second came 2 years later, a DUI that had somehow vanished before it reached court. The third was more recent, just 4 years ago. Domestic violence charges filed by his previous girlfriend, withdrawn after what the notes called a substantial financial settlement and non-disclosure agreement. I read through the documents twice, my vision blurring at the edges. The hospital reports detailed fractured ribs, a broken nose, contusions consistent with repeated blows. The victim had been 26 years old, a paralegal working at his father's law firm. Just like I was now 28, working in marketing, younger than Marcus, professionally beneath him. A knock on the stall door made me jump. "Emma, are you all right?" It was Olivia, Marcus's younger sister, and the only Wellington who'd ever shown me genuine warmth. "Marcus sent me to check on you." I emerged from the stall, my face carefully composed despite the storm raging inside me. Olivia took one look at my expression and closed the bathroom door, locking it. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I should have lied, should have smiled and said I was fine, just embarrassed about the glass. Instead, perhaps because Olivia had always been kind, or perhaps because I desperately needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, I handed her my phone. She read in silence, her face growing paler with each swipe of the screen. When she finished, she looked up at me with something that might have been pity or might have been fear. "You didn't know," she said. It wasn't a question. "How did you?" "I was 15 when it happened with the paralegal. Dad made us all sign NDAs about it. Paid her off, got the record sealed." Olivia's hands were trembling now. I thought Marcus had changed. He went to therapy, anger management. Mom and Dad said it was all behind him. Has he ever? I couldn't finish the question. "Not that I know of." "But Emma, there's something else you should know." She pulled out her own phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Rebecca, his ex, she didn't just take the money and disappear. She moved to Atlanta, changed her name. I've been in touch with her. After she heard Marcus was engaged again, she wanted to warn whoever it was, but she was terrified of breaking the NDA. My phone buzzed with an incoming email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You deserve to know the truth." "That's her," Olivia said softly. "She sent me this earlier today. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. I didn't want to ruin the party, but after seeing you just now..." I opened the email with numb fingers. What I found inside was a detailed account of Rebecca's relationship with Marcus, the gradual escalation from criticism to control, from control to physical violence, photos of injuries, medical records, a restraining order that had been quietly dissolved as part of the settlement, and a warning. "He will make you think you're crazy. He will isolate you from anyone who might question him. By the time you realize what's happening, you'll be completely dependent on him. Please, if you're reading this, run." "I have to tell someone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "His parents need to know that..." "They already know." Olivia's words hit like a slap. "Emma, they've always known. They're the ones who covered it up." The bathroom door rattled. Marcus's voice came through. Jovial for the benefit of anyone in the hallway, but with an edge I'd learned to recognize. "Everything all right in there, ladies? Emma, sweetheart, people are asking for you." Olivia and I exchanged a glance. She mouthed one word. "Careful." I deleted the email, cleared my recent calls, and tucked my phone into my clutch. Then I unlocked the door and stepped out to face my fiancé. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "There you are." Mother was getting worried. His hand found my elbow again, steering me back toward the terrace. "You've been gone for 20 minutes. People are starting to talk." "I wasn't feeling well," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You seem fine now." His thumb pressed against the soft underside of my arm, just hard enough to bruise. "Let's not make this evening any more awkward than you already have, shall we?" Back on the terrace, I moved through the crowd like an automaton, accepting congratulations and making small talk while my mind raced. Constance Wellington appeared at my side, her expression carefully arranged into something that might pass for maternal concern. "Emma dear, might I have a word?" She guided me away from the other guests, toward a quiet corner overlooking the golf course. I wanted to speak to you about your behavior this evening. My behavior? The words came out sharper than intended. The glass? The extended absence? Your general demeanor? It's all been rather concerning. Constance's smile was a blade wrapped in silk. I understand you may feel overwhelmed by all of this. The Wellington family has certain expectations, standards that must be maintained. When you marry Marcus, you'll be representing not just yourself, but generations of family legacy. I thought of those court documents, the sealed arrests, the paid-off victim who'd been forced into silence. I understand completely, I said, meaning something entirely different than what Constance heard. Good, because I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings about what this marriage requires. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. Marcus is a good man from a good family. Whatever you might hear from jealous acquaintances or bitter ex-girlfriends, and I assure you, there are always bitter ex-girlfriends. Remember that we Wellingtons take care of our own. We protect our family's reputation at all costs. The threat wasn't even subtle. Of course, I murmured. Wonderful. Now, I think it's time we made the official toasts. Marcus has been so patient waiting for you. She steered me back into the crowd, where Marcus stood at the center of a small group, holding a fresh champagne flute. As I approached, I caught his eye. For just a moment, the charming mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. He'd known I was in that bathroom longer than necessary. He'd sent Olivia to check on me. Had he suspected what I'd discovered? The toast was everything a Wellington engagement announcement should be. Marcus spoke eloquently about fate and partnership, about building a future together, about how lucky he was to have found someone who understood what family meant. His father made jokes about grandchildren. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I stood beside Marcus, my hand in his, and smiled for the cameras. But inside, I was already planning my escape. The party ended just after midnight. Marcus drove us back to my apartment in his Tesla, one hand on the wheel, the other resting possessively on my thigh. We'd been living separately until the wedding. Constance had insisted on maintaining proper appearances, but Marcus had a key and often stayed over, a trial run for marriage that had increasingly felt less like cohabitation and more like occupation. You were quiet tonight, he said as we pulled into my parking space. After the bathroom incident. I was embarrassed. You should be. His tone was light, almost playful, but there was steel underneath. Do you know how much that party cost my parents? And you managed to make yourself the center of attention within the first hour. It was an accident. It was careless. Just like everything else you do. He got out of the car and came around to open my door, the perfect gentleman for anyone who might be watching. As I stepped out, his hand caught my wrist. We need to discuss your behavior. Inside my apartment, the mask came off entirely. What the hell was that tonight? Marcus demanded, loosening his tie. You disappeared for 20 minutes with my sister. What were you two talking about? Nothing, just girl talk. Bullshit. He was pacing now, his movements sharp and controlled. Olivia's been acting strange lately. Did she say something to you? About me? No. The lie came smoothly. I'd had months of practice reading his moods, learning when to deflect and when to submit. She was just being nice. I was upset about dropping the glass. You're lying. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I can always tell when you're lying, Emma. Your left eye twitches. It didn't. I'd checked. But the accusation itself was a trap. Deny it, and I was lying about lying. Admit it, and I confirmed his suspicion. This was how he operated, I realized with sudden clarity. Every conversation a minefield, every response potentially wrong. I'm not lying, I said carefully. Olivia and I talked about the wedding, about honeymoon ideas, normal things. He studied my face for a long moment, then abruptly relaxed, his expression shifting back to charming. Of course you did. I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's been a stressful evening. All those people, all those expectations. He pulled me into an embrace that felt more like restraint than comfort. My parents can be overwhelming. I know Mother was hard on you about the glass. She was fine. No, she wasn't. She's a perfectionist, and sometimes she forgets that not everyone grew up with the same advantages. His hand stroked my hair with practiced gentleness. But that's why I love you. You're real, authentic. Not like those vapid trust fund babies I grew up with. It was a script he'd performed before, this hot and cold routine. First the criticism, then the apology wrapped in another insult, then the declaration of love. Keep me off balance, grateful for his affection, constantly trying to prove myself worthy. I pulled back slightly. I should get some sleep. It's been a long night. Not yet. His grip tightened. There's something we need to clear up first. My heart rate spiked. What's that? My mother wants you to come to the house tomorrow. To apologize. Apologize for what? For embarrassing me tonight. For making my parents' party about you and your clumsiness instead of about our future. He said it so reasonably, as if it made perfect sense. It's just a formality. You know how traditional she is. A proper apology, maybe some flowers. Show that you understand the gravity of representing the Wellington name. Marcus, I dropped a glass. That's all. That's not how my parents see it. His voice hardened. Emma, we're getting married in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. After that, you're part of this family, which means you follow family protocols. If my mother wants an apology, you apologize. It's that simple. And if I don't? The question hung in the air between us. I watched emotions flicker across his face. Surprise that I'd challenged him, anger at the defiance, calculation as he considered his response. Then I'd have to seriously reconsider whether you're ready for this marriage, he said finally. My family means everything to me. If you can't show them basic respect, if you're going to be stubborn and difficult over something this minor, then maybe we need to think about what that says about our future. There it was. The threat underneath the reasonable tone. Apologize or lose the wedding, the relationship, the future we'd planned. Except now I knew what that future really meant. What kind of man I was actually marrying. Fine, I said, hating myself for the word. I'll apologize tomorrow. That's my girl. He kissed my forehead, his good humor restored. See? That wasn't so hard. And Emma, don't mention any of this to your parents. They're already nervous about the wedding, about fitting in with my family. No need to worry them over something so trivial. He'd been isolating me for months, I realized, gradually cutting me off from friends who didn't understand our relationship, family who weren't sophisticated enough for Wellington events, coworkers who might notice the changes in me. By the time he left my apartment that night, I'd mentally cataloged a dozen ways he'd been slowly erasing my support system. The moment his car pulled away, I was on the phone. Detective Morrison. My voice shook despite my efforts to control it. This is Emma Castellano. You gave me your card last year after that break-in at my office. I need your help with something sensitive. Sarah Morrison had worked fraud and white-collar crime for Charleston PD before moving to private investigation 3 years ago. We'd met when someone had stolen laptops from my firm's office, and I'd been impressed by her thoroughness and discretion. Emma, it's after midnight. What's wrong? I need you to run a background check, a comprehensive one. I need to know everything about someone's criminal history, even if it's been sealed or expunged. There was a pause. That's not exactly legal unless you have proper authorization. I know. But I also know you have contacts who can access those records. I'll pay whatever it costs. Who are we talking about? Marcus Wellington III. Another pause, longer this time. The Wellington family? Emma, those people have serious connections. If they find out someone's digging into sealed records, they won't find out. And Sarah, I really need this. I think I'm in danger. That changed everything. Tell me what's going on. I spent the next hour explaining everything. The dropped glass, the anonymous text with court documents, Olivia's confession, Rebecca's email. Sarah listened without interrupting, but I could hear her typing, likely already starting her investigation. "Here's what I can do," she said when I finished. "I have a friend who used to work in court administration. She might be able to access sealed juvenile and adult records if we can give her a legitimate reason. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Every conversation with Marcus, every interaction with his family, times, dates, what was said. If he's isolating you like you describe, we need a paper trail. And the apology tomorrow? Go. Act normal. But Emma," her voice turned serious, "don't be alone with him. Ever. If what you're telling me is true, if he's following the same pattern as with his ex, the engagement period is when the violence typically escalates. He's about to lock you down legally. Men like that often test boundaries right before the wedding." After we hung up, I sat in my dark apartment, still wearing Constance's chosen dress and borrowed pearls, and tried to figure out how I'd gotten here. What signs I'd missed in those early months when Marcus had seemed so perfect. But I knew the answer. I'd been blinded by the fairy tale, the successful, handsome man from a prominent family who'd chosen me, ordinary Emma Castellano, to be his wife. I'd ignored the small cruelties, the gradual changes he'd demanded, the way he'd slowly reshaped me into someone I barely recognized. My phone buzzed. Another email from Rebecca's anonymous account. This one contained a single sentence. "Trust your instincts. Trust yourself. You already know the truth." I forwarded it to Sarah, added it to the folder I was building, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, I would go to the Wellington estate and apologize for the crime of dropping a glass. I would smile and play the part they expected. But I was done being the perfect Wellington bride. The Wellington estate sat on 30 acres of manicured grounds in the historic district, a sprawling antebellum mansion that had been in the family for 6 generations. Spanish moss dripped from ancient oak trees lining the drive. The house itself was a monument to old money. White columns, black shutters, a veranda that wrapped around the entire structure. I'd been there dozens of times, but never before with the knowledge I now carried. Constance met me at the door, dressed in a crisp linen pantsuit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. "Emma, darling, thank you for coming." Her tone suggested she'd expected nothing less than my complete compliance. "Of course. I wanted to apologize for last night. Let's discuss it in the study. Marcus and his father are playing golf, so it's just us girls." She led me through halls lined with family portraits, generations of Wellingtons staring down with varying degrees of judgment. "I've asked Olivia to join us as well. I thought it would be good to clear the air with the whole family." Olivia was already in the study when we arrived, perched nervously on the edge of a leather chair. She met my eyes briefly, and I saw the apology there. The warning. Whatever was about to happen, she'd known it was coming. "Please, sit." Constance gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Emma, I want to be very direct with you. Last night's behavior was completely unacceptable. I know, and I'm truly sorry. Dropping that glass was careless, and I understand how it reflected poorly on—" "I'm not talking about the glass." Constance's voice cut through my apology like a knife. I'm talking about whatever conversation you had with my daughter in that bathroom. Whatever poisonous seeds she may have planted in your head about my son. My blood went cold. I don't know what you mean. Please don't insult my intelligence. Olivia confessed everything this morning. She told you about Rebecca. Showed you things that were meant to remain private. Family matters that have been dealt with and put to rest. Constance's eyes were hard as diamonds. I want to be very clear about something, Emma. My son made mistakes when he was younger. Yes, there were incidents. Yes, there were consequences. But those situations were handled appropriately, and Marcus has done everything asked of him. Therapy, anger management, community service that was kept private to protect everyone involved. Protect everyone? The words came out before I could stop them. Or protect Marcus's reputation? Both. Constance didn't even pretend otherwise. Emma, you need to understand how the world works for families like ours. We have responsibilities, legacies to maintain. When someone in the family makes a mistake, we fix it. We make amends. We ensure it doesn't happen again. We don't allow one person's error to destroy generations of good standing. He put someone in the hospital. An unfortunate altercation between two young men who'd been drinking. The other boy was equally at fault. The fight was mutual. Marcus's father ensured both parties received proper medical care and legal representation. And the domestic violence charge? Constance's expression didn't change. A vindictive ex-girlfriend who saw an opportunity for a payday. Rebecca was unstable, manipulative. She deliberately provoked Marcus, created situations designed to make him lose control, then ran to the authorities when he finally reacted. It was entrapment, plain and simple. That's not what the medical reports said. Those reports were taken out of context. Rebecca hurt herself and blamed Marcus. It's a tale as old as time. A woman scorns, then seeks revenge through whatever means necessary. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost confidential. Emma, I'm going to be frank with you. You're not the first woman Marcus has brought home. You're not even the second. But you're the one he's chosen to marry, which means something. It means he sees potential in you. Don't throw that away because my naive daughter fell for a con artist's sob story. I looked at Olivia, who was staring at her hands, her face flushed with shame or anger. I couldn't tell which. Rebecca wasn't lying, I said quietly. How would you possibly know that? You've never met her. You've only seen whatever carefully edited version of events she wanted you to see. Constance stood, moving to a cabinet where she pulled out a thick file folder. Since we're being transparent, let me show you what Rebecca was really like. She dropped the folder in front of me. Inside were photos of Rebecca at clubs, clearly intoxicated. Text messages taken out of context that could be read as threatening. Bank statements highlighting large deposits around the time of the settlement. A psychiatric evaluation that mentioned borderline personality disorder. This is what Marcus endured for 2 years, Constance said. A woman who was emotionally unstable, financially motivated, and willing to destroy a good man's reputation to get what she wanted. When Marcus finally ended the relationship, she went nuclear. The charges, the restraining order, all of it was revenge. Then why did you pay her off? Because fighting it would have been more expensive and more public. Sometimes, Emma, discretion is the better part of valor. We gave Rebecca what she wanted, money and a clean exit. And in return, she agreed to stop her campaign of harassment. Everyone won. It was a compelling narrative, told by a woman who'd clearly spent years perfecting it. If I hadn't seen those court documents, if I hadn't read Rebecca's detailed account, if Sarah Morrison wasn't at this moment pulling sealed records, I might have believed it. I understand, I said, because that's what they wanted to hear. Good. Then we can move forward. Constance returned to her seat. Now, about the apology. I think it would be appropriate for you to issue a formal statement to the family, acknowledging that you spoke out of turn, that you regret questioning Marcus's character, and that you understand the privilege of marrying into the Wellington family. You want me to apologize for believing his ex-girlfriend? I want you to apologize for allowing yourself to be manipulated into doubting your fiancé, for giving credence to lies from a disturbed woman, for disrespecting this family by entertaining such slanderous accusations. Constance's voice hardened. Emma, you need to decide right now what kind of wife you're going to be. Are you going to be the kind who supports her husband, who stands by her family, who understands that sometimes protecting the people you love means protecting them from their past mistakes? Or are you going to be the kind who sabotages her own happiness by dwelling on things that are over and done with? The ultimatum was clear: apologize and submit, or the engagement was over. In the corner, Olivia finally spoke. Mom, this isn't fair. Emma has a right to. Olivia, you've done enough damage. Constance didn't even look at her daughter. You betrayed your brother's trust and violated family confidentiality. You'll be dealing with your own consequences. What consequences? Olivia's voice rose. What are you going to do, cut me off? Disown me for telling the truth? If necessary. The casual cruelty in Constance's tone made my skin crawl. You're 24 years old, Olivia. You have a trust fund that doesn't vest until you're 30, a credit card that I control, and a car that's registered in your father's name. Before you decide to be noble, think very carefully about what you're willing to lose. I watched the calculation happen on Olivia's face, the weighing of principles against financial security, justice against comfort. She was young enough that 6 years until her trust fund vested might as well be forever. Old enough to know what being cut off from the Wellington money would mean for her lifestyle. Emma, Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shown you those things. I was out of line. And there it was. The entire family playbook in one moment. Coercion dressed as concern, threats wrapped in reason. Isolate, confuse, force compliance. I see, I said. I stood up, smoothing my dress. May I have a moment to think about this? Of course. Take all the time you need. Constance smiled, sensing victory. Use the powder room down the hall. Compose yourself. When you come back, we'll discuss the exact wording of your apology. In the bathroom, I locked the door and immediately called Sarah Morrison. Emma, what's wrong? You sound. I need those records now, whatever you can get. I'm at the Wellington estate, and Constance just spent 20 minutes trying to convince me Rebecca was a con artist. She has an entire file of evidence that makes her look unhinged. Manufactured evidence is textbook abuser behavior, Sarah said. They document their victims' reactions to the abuse, then use those reactions as proof that the victim was unstable. Emma, you need to get out of there. I know, but I need ammunition first. Constance said Marcus went to therapy, anger management, community service. Can you verify that? I'm already on it. My contact pulled his juvenile record. It's worse than we thought. There were 3 incidents before he turned 18, all handled privately through family connections. I'm emailing you everything now. My phone buzzed with Sarah's email. The attached documents painted a disturbing picture. Marcus at 15, assaulting a girlfriend at boarding school. Marcus at 16, arrested for destruction of property after trashing his then-girlfriend's car. Marcus at 17, suspended from school for stalking a classmate who'd broken up with him. Each incident had been resolved quietly, money changing hands, record sealed, victims silenced. There's more, Sarah continued. I found Rebecca. She's willing to talk, but only if she has protection from the Wellington lawyers. She's terrified of them, Emma. She said she'd rather live in fear of breaking the NDA than risk what they'd do to her legally if she spoke out. What do we need to protect her? Evidence that Marcus is currently engaging in the same patterns. Documentation of his behavior with you. Enough to show that her case wasn't isolated, that there's an ongoing threat. Sarah paused. Emma, this is getting dangerous. These people have serious money and serious connections. If you're going to move against them, you need to be absolutely certain. I'm certain. Then here's what we do. Go back out there. Apologize like they want. Play along for now. But while you're doing that, I'll be building our case. We need more victims, more evidence. And we need to do this right, because you only get one shot at taking down a family like the Wellingtons. When I returned to the study, Constance looked up expectantly. I'd like to apologize, I said, my voice steady. You're right that I acted inappropriately. I allowed myself to be influenced by information I couldn't verify, and I questioned Marcus's character based on incomplete evidence. That was wrong of me. Constance's smile widened. I'm so glad you see it that way. I also think, I continued, that it would be appropriate for me to apologize to Marcus in person, and to his father as well. This is a family matter, and everyone should hear my apology directly. That's very mature of you. The men should be back from golf within the hour. Why don't you stay for lunch? We can address this as a family, put it all behind us, and move forward with the wedding planning. Lunch at the Wellington estate was an exercise in psychological warfare. Marcus and his father arrived to find me sitting in the formal dining room, properly contrite, ready to offer my apologies. The whole family gathered around the mahogany table that could seat 20, and I delivered my carefully prepared statement. I want to apologize for any confusion or doubt I may have caused, I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I realize now that I allowed myself to be misled by someone with an agenda. I trust Marcus completely, and I'm honored to be joining this family. Marcus reached across the table to take my hand. I appreciate that, sweetheart. I know this hasn't been easy for you. It hasn't, I agreed, which is why I think it's important that we're all completely honest with each other going forward. No more secrets, no more surprises. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Suspicion, maybe. Or calculation. Of course, transparency is the foundation of any good marriage. I'm glad you feel that way. I turned to Constance. I was actually hoping you might share some stories about Marcus growing up. I feel like there's so much of his past I don't know about. The tension around the table was palpable. Marcus Sr. cleared his throat. Emma, darling, I'm sure those old stories would bore you to tears. Not at all. I want to know everything about the man I'm marrying, the good and the bad. Every relationship has rough patches, right? It's how we handle them that matters. Constance's smile had frozen on her face. Perhaps after lunch, Emma and I could look through some photo albums. Would that satisfy your curiosity? That would be lovely, I said, though we both knew she'd only show me the sanitized version of Marcus's life. The rest of lunch passed in careful conversation, wedding details, honeymoon plans, the renovations they wanted to make on the house Marcus had bought for us in the historic district. Another Wellington property, of course. Everything was always under their control. As we ate, I couldn't stop thinking about those sealed juvenile records, about the pattern that had started so young and never truly ended. Marcus had learned early that his family would protect him from consequences, that money and connections could make any problem disappear. He'd had almost 20 years of practice manipulating the system, refining his techniques, but he'd never encountered someone who was deliberately documenting everything. After lunch, while Constance was showing me those sanitized photo albums, my phone was recording every word. When Marcus pulled me aside to thank me for being reasonable, I made sure to note the exact time and what he said. When his father made comments about how important it was for Wellington wives to be supportive and discreet, I committed it all to memory. I was building my case one interaction at a time. By the time I left the estate that evening, everyone seemed satisfied that the crisis had passed. Emma had seen the error of her ways. She'd apologized appropriately. The wedding could proceed as planned. What they didn't know was that while I'd been at the estate, Sarah Morrison had been interviewing Rebecca, getting her full statement on record, documenting everything the Wellingtons had done to silence her. Building a timeline that matched exactly with the patterns Marcus was now showing with me. What they didn't know was that Sarah had also tracked down the paralegal from Marcus's father's firm, the one who'd filed the domestic violence charges. She'd agreed to talk, NDA be damned, because she'd heard Marcus was engaged again and couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent. What they didn't know was that I'd already consulted with 3 different lawyers about how to break an engagement, how to protect myself legally, and what evidence would be needed if the Wellingtons decided to come after me for defaming their son. I'd spent the entire day playing the compliant future daughter-in-law. But by the time I drove away from that estate, I had everything I needed to burn their carefully constructed facade to the ground. The only question was when to light the match. The week after my apology passed in a strange blur of normalcy and subterfuge. To the outside world, Emma Castellano was the perfect bride-to-be, counting down the days until her fairy tale wedding. Behind closed doors, I was systematically building a case that would shatter the Wellington family's carefully maintained image. Sarah Morrison worked around the clock, and her findings were damning. She'd located 4 more women, 4 victims who dated Marcus between Rebecca and me, relationships that had never made it to the altar but had followed the same disturbing pattern. Charm offensive, gradual isolation, criticism disguised as concern, then escalation to control and intimidation. 2 had experienced physical violence. All had been paid off or frightened into silence. The Wellingtons have a system, Sarah told me during one of our clandestine meetings at a coffee shop across town. They monitor Marcus's relationships. When things start going south, they intervene before it gets public. Usually with money, sometimes with legal threats. They've been doing this since he was a teenager. How is that possible? How does no one know? Because they're very, very good at it. And because people like the Wellingtons exist in a different world than the rest of us, they have private investigators who find the victims before they go to police, lawyers who offer settlements that come with ironclad NDAs, connections that can make court records disappear. Sarah pushed a thick folder across the table. But here's the thing, they've never dealt with someone who had advance warning. You knew what you were walking into. You've been documenting everything. That changes the game. The folder contained statements from all 4 women, along with copies of their settlement agreements. Each NDA had the same clause. The women couldn't discuss their relationships with Marcus Wellington III, couldn't disparage the Wellington family, couldn't contact any future romantic partners of Marcus's. Violation would result in immediate legal action and repayment of settlement funds with interest. These NDAs are probably unenforceable, I said, scanning the documents. They're essentially covering up crimes. Probably, but these women didn't know that, and even if they suspected, going up against Wellington lawyers would bankrupt them. Sarah leaned forward. Emma, we have enough here to destroy Marcus, to expose his whole family's complicity. But you need to understand what that means. They will come after you with everything they have. Your reputation, your career, your finances. Nothing will be off limits. I know. Do you? Because I've seen families like this operate. They don't just fight back. They annihilate. And they have resources we can't match. They have money, I said quietly. But we have the truth. And we have something they don't expect. What's that? Documentation from someone who was supposed to be family. I pulled out my own folder, thinner than Sarah's, but just as damaging. Every conversation I've had with Constance and Marcus Sr. since I found out. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt to silence me. All recorded, all time-stamped, all admissible. Sarah's eyes widened. You've been recording them? South Carolina is a one-party consent state. I can legally record any conversation I'm part of. I'd done my research, and I've been very careful to be part of every conversation. You're more devious than I gave you credit for. I learned from watching Marcus. He's been playing psychological games with me for months. I just started playing back. The question was when to reveal what I knew. The wedding was in 10 days. Part of me wanted to wait until the ceremony itself, to expose Marcus in front of all his family's friends and connections. But the smarter play was to move sooner, before the Wellingtons could prepare their counterstrike. The decision was made for me 3 days later. I was at work, reviewing marketing materials for a client pitch, when Marcus appeared in my office doorway unannounced. He'd never visited my workplace before. I'd always kept that part of my life separate from him, some instinct telling me to maintain at least one space that was entirely mine. "Surprise," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thought I'd take my beautiful fiancé to lunch." Around us, my coworkers smiled at the romantic gesture. Marcus played it perfectly, the attentive groom-to-be stealing his bride away for a midday date. But I saw the tension in his shoulders, the calculated nature of his charm. "That's sweet," I said carefully. "Let me just grab my bag." He waited while I gathered my things, and I noticed he was watching my computer screen, my desk, looking for something. When we got to his car, he didn't drive to a restaurant. Instead, he pulled into a parking garage and stopped on an empty level. "We need to talk," he said, killing the engine. "About what?" "About why you've been meeting with a private investigator." His voice was level, controlled, but I could hear the rage underneath. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out, Emma? Did you think I'm stupid?" My heart hammered, but I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard enough to hurt. "I have people who watch for this kind of thing. Someone making inquiries about sealed records, talking to people from my past. Did you really think you could investigate me without me knowing?" So the Wellingtons did monitor for threats. Sarah had been right. "You're hurting me," I said quietly. "I'll hurt you a lot worse if you don't start telling me the truth." He twisted my wrist, and I gasped. "What has that investigator told you? Who has she talked to?" This was it. The moment where the mask came completely off. Where Marcus showed me exactly who he was when things didn't go his way. I'd known it was coming, had prepared for it, but the reality was still terrifying. "She told me about the others," I said. "About the women before me. About what you did to them." "What I did?" He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Is that what they said? That I'm some kind of monster?" "Emma, those women were unstable, manipulative. They tried to trap me. And when that didn't work, they tried to destroy me." "That's not what the hospital reports say." His grip tightened. "Those reports are lies, exaggerations. You don't understand what it's like, dealing with women who are so desperate to lock down a Wellington that they'll hurt themselves just to make me look bad." Rebecca had 3 broken ribs. Rebecca was in a car accident. She tried to blame me for it to get money from my family. The police report said the injuries were inconsistent with a car accident. The police were wrong. His face was inches from mine now. "Emma, I'm giving you one chance to fix this. You're going to call off your investigator. You're going to destroy whatever evidence she thinks she has. And you're going to marry me in 10 days like we planned. If you do that, we can forget this ever happened. And if I don't? Then you'll find out exactly what the Wellington family does to people who threaten us." He released my wrist, leaving red marks on my skin. "Do you have any idea what we're capable of?" My father has judges on speed dial. My mother has connections in every major firm in the state. We will destroy you, Emma. Your career, your reputation, your family. Nothing will be safe. We'll bury you so deep, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Wellington. Is that what you told Rebecca? Before your parents paid her off? Rebecca was smart enough to take the money and disappear. You should be too. He started the car. I'm taking you back to work now. You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision. Either you drop this, apologize to my family for the disrespect, and we move forward with the wedding. Or you refuse, and you see what happens to people who cross us. He drove me back in silence. When I got out of the car, he grabbed my hand, squeezing hard enough to make me wince. Choose wisely, Emma. You really don't want to be my enemy. Back in my office, I locked the door and immediately called Sarah. He knows, I said without preamble. They've been monitoring for exactly this kind of investigation. He just threatened me, physically grabbed me and said he'd destroy my life if I don't drop it. Did anyone see? No, he was smart about it. Isolated location, no witnesses. Emma, you need to go to the police, right now. That's assault, and it's a direct threat. And he'll say it never happened. It's my word against his, and he's a Wellington. I looked at the red marks on my wrist, already fading. But I got him on recording. You were recording in the car? I've been recording every interaction since the apology. My phone's been in my pocket, running a voice memo app. I have everything. The threats, the assault, all of it. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Emma, you're playing with fire. I know, which is why we need to move now. Not tomorrow, not after the wedding. Today. I opened my laptop, pulling up the email I'd been drafting for the past week. I'm sending everything to the Charleston Post and Courier. All the victim statements, all the settlement agreements, all the sealed records you accessed. I'm CCing the other victims so they can go on record if they want to, and I'm sending copies to every board member at Marcus's father's law firm. They'll sue for defamation. Let them. Discovery in a defamation case would expose everything they've been hiding. They won't risk it. I attached the folders to the email. I'm also sending a copy to the DA's office. Maybe they can't prosecute the old cases, but they can open an investigation. Public pressure might force it. What about you? Where will you go when this breaks? I've already booked a flight to my sister's place in Colorado. I'm leaving tonight. I'd been planning this exit for days, knowing it might come to this. By the time the Wellingtons realize what's happening, I'll be gone. They'll still come after you. I know, but at least I won't be married to him. I sent the emails at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. Within 20 minutes, my phone started ringing. Marcus, Constance, Marcus Sr., even Olivia. I ignored them all, packed a go-bag from my apartment, and headed to the airport. The first article hit the Post and Courier's website at 7:30 p.m. Prominent Charleston family accused of covering up son's violent history. By 9 p.m., it had gone viral on local social media. By midnight, 3 of Marcus's previous victims had given interviews to other news outlets. NDA violations be damned. The dam had broken. From Colorado, I watched the fallout unfold on my laptop. The story had everything the media loved: old money corruption, domestic violence, sealed records, multiple victims. Every hour brought new revelations as journalists dug deeper. Marcus's juvenile record became public. The law firm settlements were exposed. Constance and Marcus Sr. were photographed fleeing from reporters. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters, from friends, from acquaintances I hadn't heard from in years. But the call I was waiting for came 3 days after the story broke. Emma, this is District Attorney Jennifer Hawkins. I'd like to talk to you about pressing charges. We spoke for 2 hours. I sent her everything: The recordings, the documentation, the evidence of Marcus's assault in the parking garage. She was honest about the challenges. The old cases were past the statute of limitations. The sealed records would be difficult to use. The Wellington lawyers would fight everything. But public pressure was mounting. 4 women had now come forward with similar stories. A pattern was undeniable, and I had something none of the others had possessed. Evidence of recent criminal behavior, documented and recorded. "We can charge him with assault and battery from the parking garage incident," DA Hawkins said. "The recording is clear. And we can investigate the systematic obstruction of justice by his parents. If we can prove they knowingly concealed crimes, paid off victims to prevent testimony, that's felony territory. What are my chances?" "Better than you think. The Wellingtons' biggest weakness is that they've relied on secrecy and intimidation for so long, they never prepared for what happens when the truth comes out. They're scrambling. And Emma? You broke the pattern. You refused to be silent. That matters." The legal battle that followed was brutal. The Wellingtons hired a team of lawyers who attacked my credibility, my character, my motives. They painted me as a gold digger who'd fabricated evidence when Marcus tried to end the engagement. They produced witnesses who swore I'd been unstable, obsessed, manipulative. But they couldn't explain the recordings. They couldn't explain why 4 other women had identical stories. They couldn't explain the sealed juvenile records or the pattern of settlements. Most importantly, they couldn't explain why, if I was lying, Marcus had grabbed me and threatened me in that parking garage. The assault charge stuck. Marcus Wellington III was arrested 6 weeks after the story broke. His parents were charged with obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Their law firm was under investigation. The family's reputation, built over 6 generations, crumbled in a matter of months. But the moment that changed everything came during the preliminary hearing. I was in the courtroom, sitting behind the prosecutor's table, when Constance and Marcus Sr. walked in. They looked older, diminished. The confident social arbiters I'd met at that engagement party were gone, replaced by frightened people facing the destruction of everything they'd built. As they passed my row, Constance stopped. For a long moment, we looked at each other. Then, quietly enough that only I could hear, she said, "We should have known better." "Known what?" I asked. "That you were different from the others, that you wouldn't break." She glanced at Marcus, sitting at the defense table, his expensive suit no longer quite hiding the reality of his situation. "We thought we could control you. We were wrong." Marcus Sr. stepped forward then, his voice barely above a whisper. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not sorry we got caught. Sorry for what we let him become. We enabled a monster because we were too proud to admit our son had problems we couldn't fix with money." "Then help fix it now," I said. "Testify. Tell the truth. Stop protecting him." They looked at each other, decades of marriage communicating in a glance. Then Constance nodded slowly. "Our lawyer will be in touch with the DA's office." 2 days later, Marcus's parents made a deal. In exchange for reduced charges and no jail time, they would testify fully about their role in covering up Marcus's crimes. They would provide documentation of every settlement, every sealed record, every victim they'd paid off. They would expose the entire system they'd built to protect their son. The plea agreement required one more thing: a public apology to all of Marcus's victims. The press conference was held on a cold morning in February, 3 months after that disastrous engagement party. Constance and Marcus Sr. stood before a wall of cameras and read a statement that their lawyers had undoubtedly written, but that they delivered with what seemed like genuine remorse. "We apologize to Emma Castellano and to every woman our son harmed. We apologize for using our resources and connections to silence victims rather than get our son the help he needed. We apologize for prioritizing our family's reputation over the safety and well-being of innocent people. Our actions enabled abuse, obstructed justice, and perpetuated harm. We were wrong. Then Constance looked directly into the camera, and I knew she was speaking to me. Emma, you were braver than we gave you credit for. You refused to accept the role we tried to force you into. You demanded the truth when we offered only carefully constructed lies. For that, we owe you more than an apology. We owe you our gratitude for doing what we were too cowardly to do, stopping our son before he hurt anyone else. The statement was splashed across every news outlet. The Wellingtons' apology to me became a viral moment, analyzed and dissected by legal experts and domestic violence advocates. Some saw it as calculated damage control, others saw it as genuine accountability. I saw it as closure. Marcus ultimately pleaded guilty to assault and battery with enhanced charges for the pattern of behavior. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and registration as a domestic violence offender. His law license was suspended. His trust fund remained frozen pending civil suits from his victims. The Wellington family's social standing never recovered. Marcus Sr. resigned from his law firm. Constance withdrew from the charitable boards and society positions that had defined her life. They became cautionary tales, proof that money and connections couldn't protect you from the consequences of your actions forever. As for me, I eventually returned to Charleston. Not to reclaim my old life, that version of Emma Castellano was gone, but to build something new. Sarah Morrison and I started a consulting firm specializing in helping abuse victims document and escape dangerous relationships. We train people to recognize red flags, to build evidence, to protect themselves legally before situations escalate. We call it the Wellington Protocol, a private joke that became a public mission statement. Because the truth is, the Wellingtons taught me something valuable. Abusers rely on silence, on shame, on victims believing they're powerless. But documentation is power. Truth is power. Refusing to play by their rules is power. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Olivia Wellington. She'd changed her name, moved to California, and was working for a domestic violence nonprofit. She wanted to apologize for not being stronger when it mattered, for letting her mother intimidate her into silence. I wrote back, telling her that she'd actually saved my life by showing me those documents in the bathroom. Without her courage in that moment, I might never have investigated further. I might have married Marcus, might have become another sealed record, another settlement, another silenced victim. We meet for coffee occasionally when she visits Charleston. She tells me about the women she's helping now, the shelters her family's money is funding as part of their ongoing penance. The Wellington fortune, once used to silence victims, now supports survivors. It's not redemption. Some actions can't be redeemed, but it's something. On what would have been my wedding day, I treat myself to dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. I order the most expensive bottle of wine, toast to myself, and reflect on how differently things could have turned out. I think about that moment at the engagement party when the champagne glass slipped from my hand. How such a small thing, a dropped glass, an embarrassing moment, a demand for an apology, had led to all of this. The Wellingtons had wanted me to apologize for embarrassing Marcus. Instead, I'd exposed him, dismantled his family's protective infrastructure, and helped ensure he could never hurt anyone else. As I finish my wine, my phone buzzes with a message from the DA's office. Another victim has come forward, emboldened by the Wellington case. She needs help documenting her abuse, building her case, finding the courage to leave. I text back immediately. I can help. When can we meet? Because that's the real ending to this story. Not revenge or justice or even closure, though those all played their parts. The real ending is that I refused to be silent, refused to accept the role they'd written for me, refused to let them make me small. And now I help others do the same. The Wellingtons wanted me to apologize for dropping a glass at their party. Instead, I made them apologize for covering up their son's crimes for over 2 decades. I'd say we're even, but honestly, I came out ahead. Some lessons you can only learn by refusing to accept the narrative someone else writes for you, by trusting yourself when everyone around you says you're wrong, by documenting the truth when powerful people want you to accept their lies. The Wellingtons thought they were untouchable. They learned otherwise. And somewhere in a minimum security prison, Marcus Wellington III has time to reflect on what happens when you finally encounter someone who won't break, won't bend, and won't stay silent. I hope he uses that time wisely. As for me, I'm busy helping the next person who refuses to be silenced. There's always someone who needs help escaping, documenting, finding their courage. The Wellington Protocol stays busy, and I sleep very, very well at night. End. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.